Hello everyone, welcome back or to the channel. I am Rainbow Hearts Villain Thoughts, and today we will be doing on the channel the first ever book versus book video. Again though, for the channel, as I'm sure this concept has been done before. Basically, I will be comparing two different books who will be fighting in hand to see which one is the better of the two. Now, these concepts are pretty much something that is palatable for both books. Actually, not palatable is the right word, but basically, both books actually have in them. I'll never have a book that has no heat versus a book with heat, and having heat as an actual point of judgment, because obviously that's packing the jury box. And we're not about to do that here. Without further ado, though, let's reveal today's books. Deathball and the Witch and His Crow. Deathball is the first book of a three-part series, co-written by W.H. Lockwood and T.J. Rose. Meanwhile, The Witch and His Crow is a two-part book series and is written solely by Ben Alderson. I have written at least, not written, I'm sorry, read at least one book by all three authors before these two books. And I have to say, I love their writing styles. And having them compete against each other like this is really going to be a challenge. But hey, I'm up for it, I guess. I hope you, the viewer, are as well. So, the judgment points. Here is what your honorable judge, myself, will be judging or basing my judgment on. Plot, which has the better plot, which has the better setting, which has the better character/character development, which has the better point of view, which has the better heat, and which has the better concept. Ending in the final verdict. Now, I will point out that again, heat is here today because both books possess heat. If they did not, I would actually omit heat and either replace it with something else or have it completely removed altogether. So, that being said, let's get into our first round of judgment, the plot. Deathball's plot follows Robin and Marco. Robin, who is taken from his small island and forced into the deadly game of Deathball. And his captain/future opponent, possibly, Marco, who is from another place as well outside of the city they currently find themselves in. He's ruthless and cold-hearted. But what happens when he lays eyes on his little bird? Ah, young love, isn't it something? Now, The Witch and His Crow, his plot, is a bit darker. This follows the story of a young witch who watches his mother, well, doesn't watch, but hears his mother being brutally unalived. She, at the time, was the Grand High Witch of their coven. With her gone, a new one has to be decided upon. However, her son is hidden by a forbidden familiar. And all this, of course, after the poor boy knows his mother was unalived by witch hunters. Flash forward 18 years later, he is caught while helping a fellow witch not get killed by witch hunters, only for his blood to finally be used to start the witch trials again. However, he quickly discovers that things are not what they seem, and there is an enemy amongst the competitors. So he happily joins in to make sure the strength and power of the coven is not given to the witch hunters. Along the way, the poor witch goes through horrific trials set up by the goddess Hecate herself. Or is something else brewing and boding deep down? Well, I will say I feel like I gave a better plot description to Witch and His Crow than Death Ball. But I also will point out that I read Death Ball a while back. It's been a while, so the plot is kind of, you know, bad in my memory. But I do remember how I felt reading the plots. And I honestly feel like Death Ball had the better plot. It was more stable, more accurate, and didn't really change that much. Um, as where The Witch and His Crow, the plot had several different subplots, which, for some is a good thing, and it can be, unless those subplots kind of can get in the way of the plot itself. And I personally have autism, and so for me, having a bunch of different subplots can get a little testy with my brain. And I don't know. It comes down to the fact that Death Ball had this beautiful, amazing plot that stood on its own. Like, you could have taken this plot with any other type of book and it would have worked. The Witch and His Crow, however, the plot really focuses, in my opinion, on the book itself. Like, if you take this plot of what's going on and you take it into other books, it can kind of fall apart. In my opinion, at least, if I'm making sense, I hope I am. So I gotta give the plot to Death Ball on this one. But The Witch and His Crow wasn't bad. Next up is the setting. Death Ball takes place in a post-apocalyptic world, or I guess it's called that technically. Basically, humanity finally did itself in, and the few survivors have a wasteland to live in. With few islands being sustainable for life, and certain parts of the wasteland having the ability to preserve life as long as they can keep out the mutants. But a majority of the time in the book takes place in the arena or in Marco's private villa, with only the beginning taking place at the beautiful island that Robin was born in, and we don't really get to see much of it besides in Thoughts of the Past with Marco of Robin. So there's that setting. Now, The Witch and His Crow setting is a modern day setting, but it really changes as time goes on. We have modern day England, which turns to this vivid, timeless castle surrounded by magic by Hecate, which has a point where they go back into the past during the witch trials of Europe, to a weird hidden passageway on the grounds of the castle, to this interesting maze, which was pretty cool. All in all, The Witch and His Crow has a much wider range of setting. And I'm going to kind of backtrack here, personally, because I was talking about the plot, and to be perfectly honest, I just really prefer Death Ball's plot. I really do. But, and I say that because I have to have a winner. But setting wise, I honestly think it's a no-brainer for me. It has to be The Witch and His Crow. I love how the setting changes throughout the book. It's not a stale moment. We have different areas that are described and we get to see and feel throughout the book. Deathball kind of makes up for it with the arena changing to fit each different match, but we don't get to see every Deathball match. Um, and again, a majority of the book really takes place in the dungeons of the arena and at Marco's villa, which obviously gets kind of old pretty fast. And to be honest, no one's reading Death Ball for the setting. Let's be let's be honest. I mean, you could be, but that's like saying you like to watch NASCAR because you like to watch grown men drive around in a circle. It's not really, gonna happen. um, but The Witch and His Crow, I think the setting was beautiful. It was changing, it was very fluid and not really stagnant. So setting has to go to The Witch and His Crow, most definitely. Now, characters. This one, I'm judging how the characters are and how they progress or change throughout the book. And I will say there is a slight advantage to this because Death Ball features two main characters while The Witch and His Crow only features one. So I will do my best to be impartial, I think is the word, and I will only focus on Robin in Death Ball. Since there's two instead of one character, I'll only focus on Robin and how he changes, and not Robin and Marco both, just to keep a kind of even balance. Um, and more fair for the main character of The Witch and His Crow. Now, Robin. When we first start with Robin, he's this kind of reluctant, very tight-lipped boy. Or man, sorry. He was just taken from his home. He watched the leader of his town, his home, be unalived along with his wife and their son. And he's worried about his sister, whether she survived the attack by this empire or if she was unalived as well. He doesn't know what happened to his sister. He's holding on to a thread of hope. And, he's not willing to really speak to anyone. But as the story goes on, he develops this hate-love relationship with Marco. And we see him kind of go back and forth between this, can I love this man? Do I hate this man? Can I live without this man? Kind of turmoil in him constantly throughout the book. And by the end of it, yes, the turmoil is solved, but it's one of those things where it felt like it was kind of all at once, the final verdict. It wasn't a slow burn at that point because the slow burn was everything in between, honestly. Um, but yeah, that is, I feel like Robin really developed throughout this book and changed from who he was before the way he is now. The Witch and His Crow is main character Hector Breyer. He starts off as this cocky kind of I'm better than everyone else kind of character. He's very aloof, very all to himself. And this doesn't really change much in the book. I mean, he eventually makes a friend who is the current stand-in leader of the coven, his adopted daughter, who becomes a great ally and someone he cares about. And of course, his love interest, Arwen. um, who is not going to be mentioned here because he's not a main character. I mean, he is, but it's not told through his point of view or anything like that. Well, shoot, he is a main character, isn't he? Oh my gosh, I did not think this through. We'll go back. You know what? The heck with it. We'll go back to Marco in a minute and then to Arwen. Um, this is the first time I'm doing something like this, so please bear with me. So, Hector kind of, over time does change. He becomes less assured of himself, which is kind of nice to see, but at the same time felt like instead of having faith in himself and his abilities, he just became unraveled. He became unraveled, doubtful of himself, of those around him even more. And I feel like Hector did change as a character, but in a kind of more negative way. I mean, there were some positives at the end because he did care about Arwen and his female friend. Um, but most of it I feel was kind of negative. Like he was in a negative place to begin with, and he didn't really move out of the negative space. So excuse me. Now back to Death Ball with Marco. So when we first meet Marco, he is this self-assured kind of macho Death Ball captain. He is not touchable by anyone. He's untouchable. And he's not easily shaken unless the Emperor is involved. Then, the Emperor is a sleazebag who takes advantage of his position and Marco's position. Just so you know, that is a part of the book. However, it doesn't take place on the pages. Any kind of physical contact between these two men happens off the page. So yeah, if you just in case you haven't seen that review, that does take place in the book, but again, it's not you don't read it itself. So viewer discretion definitely advised for Death Ball. But Marco over time kind of breaks down this wall because of Robin. And eventually he comes to terms with the fact that yes, I love this man. No, I cannot continue living this lie, even if it means I lose my freedom. Which I love that about Marco. He became this stone cold, emotionless pillar and that suffered in silence and finally allowed his suffering to come to the surface and be met by love and mercy. I really love that trope and those feelings there. Um Back to The Witch and His Crow, Arwen Morgan. Arwen, as described, is a tattooed, blue-eyed rival witch who does become allies with Hector. Arwen is a mysterious character, I will say, throughout majority of the book. I feel like at first he didn't care about Hector. It was more so on the lines of he could use Hector to win. But over time, I think he really did develop feelings for Hector. He kind of began to care about him, his safety, his well-being. Um which was interesting, but because there isn't really much known about Arwen throughout the book, I feel like he's a harder character to kind of understand, a harder egg to crack. Um, and because of that, I don't really like Arwen as a character. He's an interesting character at the end, but honestly, throughout the book, he's kind of a dead fish. He's there, but the mystery kind of chokes the life out of his character, I think. So, for characters, I'm going to have to give this ruling to Deathball. Next, point of view. Now, this means, for those of you who may not know, point of view is also called POV in some situations, mainly in fan fiction. But point of view is who the story is being told by at that time. Typically, this is done through the eyes of one character, which is first person. You have first person, second person, third person, and omnipotent, which I think might be third person. It's been a while since I took an English class. But yeah, it's typically the point of view of which the story is being told, through whose eyes it's being told, if anyone's eyes or if it's everyone at the same time. And typically the chapters, if there's more than one point of view at the beginning of the chapter, it'll say the name of the character who the chapter is being told through. Some books kind of have this thing where they're broken up into this thing where a chapter will have more than one point of view, which can get a little messy. And I will say, despite the fact point of view is kind of a little unfair advantage, I think, in this, I will still have it. It'll hold up in this court of judgment. I say that because Death Ball features 2 points of view. Each chapter really shifts the point of view between the two characters, with not every chapter follows this smooth pattern, mind you. Ooh, excuse me. Sorry about that. Some chapters, so you'll have 1 or 2 or 3 chapters that follow Robin before you kind of get a Marco chapter. But basically, yeah, you'll have like one chapter will be Robin's point of view, what he's going through, what he's feeling about the subject. And then the next chapter will be what's happening after that. And sometimes referencing what happened during the last chapter, but through the eyes and thoughts and feelings of Marco. I hope I said the first part as far as Robin, through Marco's point of view, while still continuing the story. So I thought that was really fluid. The Witch and His Crow only has one point of view, which is Hector. Arwen does not get his own point of view. It's solely told through the eyes of Hector. Now, Death Ball was interesting. I do love a good dual POV, or point of view, I'm not going to lie. Getting to see how different characters react or behave to something is really interesting. But the downside to multiple points of view is sometimes it's hard to keep the actual secrecy. It's hard to keep the interest going strong because you know how both characters feel about something. Instead of wondering, well, gosh, I wonder what, Marco feels about Robin, or how he feels about Robin, or, yada, 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 etc., etc. We know. We know exactly. Now, I will say that doesn't really mess up the ending to Death Ball, but when it comes to point of view, I felt like Death Ball kind of it was definitely interesting, but the mystery and the secrecy and stuff just wasn't there with Death Ball. I feel like everything was on the table for us, the reader, and it was more so waiting for it to be on the table for both characters. Which, while it's interesting for some, can be a little boring or downright disheartening, honestly. Meanwhile, The Witch and His Crow really used the point of view through Hector alone. It had so much secrecy, so much confusion, um, so much darkness to it, I would dare say, because we only see and think and hear and feel what Hector does. And it works really well for The Witch and His Crow. I feel like if we had had more than one character's point of view, it would have taken away from the story or it would have revealed too much. Excuse me. So I do believe, with point of view, the verdict has to go with The Witch and His Crow. I love how they handled it. I love the secrecy. Again, I am a more than one point of view uh bookie, I guess is the word. I'm not sure. Um, but I'm gonna have to give this one to The Witch and His Crow. Definitely. The Heat Judgment. Ah, gosh. So, I'll just go ahead and come out and say it. Death Ball is a very heated book. At one point, it feels like every other chapter is heat related. It's a constant heat fest between these two. They really cannot keep their hands off each other. They really can't. The Witch and His Crow, however, on the opposite end, has only one heat scene. And while Death Ball is kind of descriptive, very romanticized, um, The Witch and His Crow isn't really descriptive. It's not really romanticized. It's more of a heat in the moment kind of I need you, but not for a connection, but more so just I want physical contact. I want to forget what's going on. Where Death Ball, even from the beginning, you could kind of feel the emotional connection, the emotional baggage, and downside of their actions. So, and the funny thing is, if you've seen my book reviews on my channel, especially when I discussed Amanda Musin, who I love as an author, is Lover of the Gods, is first book in that series, Last Courtesan of Olympus. I make it very clear I'm not a big heat person. I am not going to pick up a book for the heat involved in it. But if there's going to be heat, I want it to be worth my time. I want it to be worth my time. I want it to be really good. And when I read The Witch and His Crow, I felt like it was kind of poking at embers in the freezing cold, waiting for that heat to come up. And there was heat coming from the fire, but it really wasn't much. I feel like that heat scene was the kind of thing that I could, when I was younger, sit there and watch with my parents. If it was in a movie, we didn't know it was in a movie, and I wouldn't have been flustered. I wouldn't have been like, oh, holy crap. Which might say more about me than the book itself, which I swear I'm not weird. But it's just how boring it was and how kind of pointless it was. I feel like the heat scene in The Witch and His Crow could have been omitted and the book would have been normal. It would have gone on the way it did. There was a brief mention afterwards about the act, but beyond that, it kind of just wasn't there. Which, mind you, it happens near the end of the book, so it does kind of make sense. Meanwhile, Death Ball, I'm going to be honest, reading that book, I felt like I needed to find my local Catholic church, go in and perform confession, and then douse myself in holy water. There was so much heat in this book, and it was so descriptive. It was so romanticized. It was so good. It was definitely a raging fire. And I want to make something clear. I am not Catholic, but this book still made me want to go have a confessional session. That's the kind of heat that even as a grown adult, I would not feel comfortable reading in public with someone over my shoulder. I would feel like I was getting weird stares from strangers, like they know what I'm reading. And because of that, the verdict falls to Deathball. Deathball wins the heat verdict. Now, the concept. This one was one I had a little trouble with, and I actually at the last minute decided to change. And I really hope I'm getting the concept correct. And this is why I really want to emphasize the fact that if you feel like I'm misunderstanding any of these points of judgment, not the judgment itself, but like the understanding of the very word itself, or meaning of the word, please do not hesitate to help correct me in the comments below. Um, I love to learn, and I'm not the smartest cookie in the cookie jar, I'm not gonna lie. So, if I'm getting, for instance, concept incorrect, please let me know in the comments below. I'm not going to throw a fit. I'm not going to get upset. I'm not going to delete your comment. I will genuinely understand, okay, I need to reevaluate what concept means in the literary world. Instead of just going on thinking it means this when I've missed the whole point. So, but concept wise, I feel like, with Deathball, the concept is two idiots in love, fighting for their lives, not willing to accept their love for each other. They're in a life or death situation, and it's enemies to lovers. They're both enemies to lovers, though, but still, it's a pretty deep concept. It is Roman Colosseum meets a Hunger Games in a way. I really enjoyed it. Now, The Witch and His Crows concept was pretty good too. Young boy wants, or young man, why did I say boy? It happens when he's a boy. Young man wants to avenge his mother in a way while keeping his promise to her. Then he throws that into abandonment, and he wants to save his kind even though he doesn't trust his own kind. And yeah, you can already see where the concept to me kind of falls apart. Um, and it kind of just starts to crumble for me, honestly. The concept to which in his crow was kind of weird for me because there were so many parts of the character himself with Hector that kind of fell apart or butted heads with how he was supposed to be, and the concept kind of butted heads with different parts of the book, and I was like, this is a little confusing. So ruling wise, I think concept goes to Deathball. Now, before the verdict, I do want to say, despite how it sounds, I loved both books. I think I gave The Witch and His Crow a 4 out of 5 Rainbow Hearts. I don't remember my rating for Deathball, but I love both these books. I love Ben Alderson's work. and I cannot wait to get the money to read the second book, which I think is The Demon and His Serpent, which came out this year, I believe. Deathball came out this year as well, but the next book is not out till next year. But I love both these books. I love all three authors. I think they're amazing from what I've read of their work already, which is admittedly only one book apiece, minus these two books, but still. Um, but that being said, I do have to give a final verdict. There were 6 categories. Again, the judgments of plot, setting, characters, point of view, heat, and concept. Out of these 5 concepts, or 5 judgments, Deathball won 4, while Witch and His Crow only won 2. So, the final verdict and the first ever versus battle for the channel, the winner is Deathball by W.H. Lockwood and T.J. Rose. Now, again, I love both books. I think they're amazing. And they're really something that I enjoyed reading. And if I could reread things, which I can't, unfortunately, because of my brain, I would love to reread both books. They were phenomenal, and I absolutely love them. That being said, thank you for watching this video. It is pretty long. I apologize. Right now it's at 36 minutes. And it'll probably be at least 37, 38 by the time I'm fully finished. But thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this, please let me know by commenting below whether you enjoy this concept or not. And if you want to see more of this alongside the typical standard book reviews. And how that would work is I'll read 2 books, I'll review them separately, and then we'll have our versus battle. Now, they don't necessarily have to align with each other. Deathball is a post-apocalyptic setting world where Witch and His Crow is more magic, witches magic. The only thing that really connects them is the violence and the fact they're both gay romance books. Which would be the kind of concept with this channel is I'm not going to compare a villain backstory or retelling book to a gay romance book. Like that's not going to happen. But I'll definitely be comparing, the books that fall under the same category of gay romance or villain backstory or retellings. But thank you so much for watching this video. Again, it's a long one. I apologize. Let me know in the comments down below which book you feel is deserving of winning, if you agree with my verdict, or if you feel like you want to challenge the judge, if you dare. No, I'm kidding, but you definitely can. And you can let me know down below how you feel about each judgment and how you would have judged it if differently. And yeah, I would really like to know your thoughts and opinions on these 2 books. Try to keep them as unspoily as possible, just in case anyone's watching this video without having read one or either of the books. Make sure to hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. It's free. You can unsubscribe at any time. And it really helps and shows support. Excuse me. And of course, turn on notifications. I'm about finished with the book Red, White, and Royal Blue, and I cannot wait to give you that book review. So, yes. Get ready for that. And yeah, I will see you next Friday, which is July 24th with the next book review. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, stay cozy, and never stop reading. Bye.